people are crying at ICE for doing their jobs. They're intervening with ICE doing their jobs. That's why they're getting shot and killed, rightfully so.
You're saying that you don't think that Kyle Rittenhouse is a quote-unquote bad kid, regardless of the fact that he brought a gun to a protest.
I don't give a because he was a loser.
The sick thing to say. I mean, she should just be embarrassed and ashamed. We're going to talk about something just so disturbing and so ridiculous, but so indicative of like the influencer age and why it's so terrible and awful. Jubilee, which I like some Jubilee content, but can't say I was particularly a fan of this. They just did a one-on-one debate between two people with very different perspectives. So you have Dean Withers, who I've talked about on the show in the past a couple times. I did an event with him once, and he's young, and I think he's got some probably learning to do, and some of his views might change over time, but he's clearly very smart. He's clearly a good debater. I disagree with him on most things, so certainly we're not on the same page. But you have him, and then on the other side, you have Emily Wilson, who is a like Republican influencer or operative of some kind. And they did this one-on-one debate where I actually really liked the format. They did this for Jubilee, of course, where they had these like clocks, and so they couldn't interrupt each other, and they each had exactly equal time, and you can only speak after the other person pauses their time, and it went back and forth and back and forth. And so they had this debate where they talked about mass deportation and ICE and some of the shootings that have happened. And what I have to say is this. She's done a number of these debates, and each one is genuinely embarrassing and hard to watch. No matter who you are more ideologically sympathetic to, it's time to stop inviting Emily Wilson to do debates. She is like the worst possible advocate or representative for Trump supporters or MAGA imaginable. The worst combination of cruelty and ignorance, and just like very, very poor debating skills as well. And so this debate ended up being quite a popular sensation, and maybe this was the point, I don't know, but it just gave them this convenient boogeyman to dunk on, kind of liberals across the internet, with these clips going super viral of this like horrifically cruel and stupid MAGA influencer. And Emily, honestly, I believe Emily may be a psyop at this point. She has to realize that she is just getting utterly annihilated in these debates and humiliated. And so then why does she keep doing it? Maybe it's like a kink thing. I don't know. But in absence of that, the only answer to me is she must be trying actively to sabotage MAGA and Republicans by making them look as bad as possible. Because there's no other explanation for why you would take so little time to prepare, do so little research and due diligence, and knowingly put yourself into situations. This is like the third time she's debated Dean, and each and every time she just gets absolutely humiliated and destroyed just from like whoever you agree with ideologically. Set that aside. If you're just like holding up point cards for like a boxing, I have no idea. Why am I talking about boxing? I don't know how boxing works, but whatever. Like if you're just scoring or judging a fight and you take your partisan or ideological hat off, he wins every time by so much. And that's why it's actually boring and uninteresting. And it's like, why couldn't you get a smart person for him to debate? And so he could actually be challenged and you could have a real clash of ideas instead. This just watches, we're going to go over this, but it feels like watching The Rock, like Dwayne The Rock Johnson, just beat the out of like a midget with Down syndrome. Like something that feels cruel and sick to watch. It's such an uneven fight. Like if you imagine that visual, you almost feel like you have to look away. That's what it's like every time I watch Emily Wilson debating Dean Withers. And again, I don't even agree with Dean. I think he actually could be challenged quite well in a debate by more equal footing participants. But it's one of the worst things I've ever had to see, this clip. And I did watch a large portion of it, but just this clip. So this clip is like clipped up by Dean, but it's not out of context. It is exactly what happened. I'm sorry. It reflects accurately the longer conversation that I watched, this clip that we're going to react to. Let's take a look.
People are crying at ICE for doing their jobs. They're intervening with ICE doing their jobs. That's why they're getting shot and killed, rightfully so. Both of those deaths of whatever their names were could have been completely avoidable.
I'll just pause on this. I can understand why intense like situations, people could reach different conclusions about whether or not a shooting is justified. But I would humbly suggest that because they're talking about Renee Good and Alex Pretty, who were killed by ICE during the Minnesota surge. And listen, I've had debates with people, I've had productive conversations with people who think the shootings are legally justified. But if you don't even know their names, you're probably not in a position to claim definitively that their lives, like the shooting was justified. Because clearly you don't know anything about the situations or them or what went down if you're calling them whatever their names was. And that's what I mean when I say she's so, just so frustrating to listen to. It's like, I had a conversation with, for one of my channels where I host panel debates, I had Sean Fitzgerald, actual justice warrior, and I had Stephen Bonnell, Destiny, and they debated this topic about Alex Pretty and Renee Good. And Sean Fitzgerald, whether you agree with him on this subject or not, knows how these things work, thinks they're probably justified shoots, and it makes his case based on the relevant facts and law and has his opinion. And someone like him could probably go back and forth with Dean in a very interesting clash of ideas. But Emily doesn't even know their names. It's like, what is the point of this exercise other than her own humiliation? And maybe, by extension, making MAGA look unserious and ridiculous and cruel, as we will get to, when that's not how most people are who voted for Trump. It's just not. And so that makes me frustrated with Jubilee for even doing this, because it's not a fair fight. It's not an adequate representative of a movement. Yet that's how it's inevitably perceived. So I'm yapping too much on this. Let's try to get through it.
Well, probably better off without him.
Oh my God.
And yeah.
Let's go ahead and focus in on one of the 3 citizens who has been murdered by ICE, and that will be Alex Pretty. So first, you made a very bold claim. A man lost his life, and I think the world lost a good man. And your takeaway is we're better off without them, and that the shooting's justified. So Emily, tell.
So they're about to get into more of her just not knowing anything. But that's just such a evil thing to say. We're better off without him, without them. These are people with loved ones. These are people. Alex Pretty, I believe, worked for years as an ICU nurse, taking care of people. And even if you think that maybe that ICE officer or that Border Patrol agent in these different cases was ultimately legally justified in protecting themselves or in the moment in an intense situation, that's fine, but you still need to be able to acknowledge, and most of the people I've talked to do, that their lives matter. They're human beings with dignity. And anytime a human, especially if you're like from the pro-life crowd, which I actually think Emily may be pro-choice, but that's a whole nother thing, just generalizing here, then you have to acknowledge that the tragedy of their loss. And if you can't, regardless of your feelings about the legality of the shootings, or I agree that they made some bad choices, still they're humans. And we all have dignity and worth and value, especially if you're a religious person. Then you have to believe that. But regardless, just as a matter of like human rights and decency, you should. And when you've lost sight with that, it's time to go outside. It's time to reconnect with your fellow man and citizen. And it's time to stop going in front of the camera, because this is like astonishingly evil and cruel and to say, and makes all of your movement look that way, even though most of them aren't, because you've inserted yourself as a representative for like a Republican side of this debate. It's horrible stuff. And then she just doesn't know anything. Like, watch this next bit.
Tell me, what is the legal standard that authorizes an LEO and engaging in the use of lethal force ending the life of an American?
I don't know. Go ahead and tell me.
So here's the thing. You don't have to be a lawyer or an expert to be a political commentator. And like off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you the statute and like the numbers and the specific things. But law enforcement officers have to have an objectively reasonable fear that the person that they're using lethal force against is about to seriously hurt or kill them or another person. That's the standard. Like maybe I haven't described it exactly correctly, like how it's laid out in the different state and federal laws, but just off the top of your head, you should be familiar with that concept. And if you're not, you have no business as a political commentator talking about law enforcement shootings. Like, what are you doing here at that point?
If you don't know the legal standard that justifies a shooting, then why the hell are you sitting here saying the shooting was justified?
I think it was justified because of his actions.
Perfect. What actions?
He went with a gun, did he not? Did he not have a loaded gun?
Yes, he did have a gun on his holster, but you should know that in accordance with the 2nd, 4th, and 14th Amendment, merely being in possession of a firearm does not authorize an LEO to literally shoot and kill you.
You're going to go to a protest with a gun and a cop sees it as you're harassing these ICE officers that are getting threatened every day? Dude, it's not even a Republican thing, a Democrat thing. It is a common sense thing. It is a...
I don't know. My whole life, Republicans and pro-Second Amendment people have actively supported the ability and right to have a firearm at a protest, and it doesn't make you a legitimate target for being shot. Now, I understand in the particulars of the Alex Preddy situation, there was confusion, they saw the gun, they panicked, whatever, but just generally speaking, you're absolutely allowed to have a gun at a protest that you're legally authorized to carry. And it's totally inconsistent with everything conservatives have ever said they believed on these issues to suddenly view that as like, well, if you brought a gun to any kind of protest, you basically forfeited your life. What? That's not what supporters of the Second Amendment, among which I count myself, have ever believed or articulated. Now, if you threaten an officer with your gun, like you take it, reach for it, or point it at them, I think at that point, I mean, you're going to get shot. And I still don't want that to happen, but it's at that point, you kind of are like bringing that upon yourself. But simply having the gun is not. And that's what I mean when I say she's not even articulating the actual perspective of the people she's supposed to be representing. It doesn't even make sense.
Thing. It is a common sense thing. I would never, CCWs, I understand. I would never bring a gun to any Trump rally, anti-Trump. That is just not, it's just not a smart thing to do. That's why you end up dead.
Okay, condemn Kyle Rittenhouse.
Kyle Rittenhouse? What?
He brought an AR-15 to a protest, remember?
I'm saying I don't know Kyle Rittenhouse situation. It was a big story. I don't care. I don't know what happened. Don't think he's a bad kid. I'm glad he's not dead.
Wait, Emily, this doesn't make...
What? Listen, I actually defended Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean, I had the take that he made bad choices and shouldn't have been there and shouldn't have brought a gun, but in the moment was legally justified in defending himself. And so I supported his legal right to, I did not think he should have been prosecuted nor convicted of the charges. And so I defended him at the time. I actually got a ban from one of my TikTok accounts, got banned for that. But this makes no sense. She's saying one person with a gun who inserted themselves into a dangerous situation, I'm glad he's dead, it was justified, and we're better off without him, than the other person with a gun who inserted himself into a dangerous situation. Of course I'm not happy. I wouldn't want him dead or his, like, and it's like she's just not even trying to be intellectually consistent or serious. Like, what is the point of this exercise other than her abject humiliation and disgrace? I really don't understand.
Emily, this doesn't make any sense, because earlier you said the world is literally better without Alex Preddy because he brought a gun.
She's just making it so easy for him.
You're saying that you don't think that Kyle Rittenhouse is a quote-unquote bad kid, regardless of the fact that he brought a gun to a protest. So what it seems like is that bringing a gun to a protest is not the relevant factor here that leads you to the conclusion that Alex Preddy was terrible and we're better off without him, and Kyle Rittenhouse is not a bad kid, but rather political affiliation.
I don't give a shit because he was a loser and his life didn't really have much meaning, and it sure doesn't matter to me.
So just to clarify,
what a sick thing to say. 5 minutes ago, you didn't even know his name. And yet you are definitively declaring him as a loser and that his life has no value. I mean, she should just be embarrassed and ashamed. And she just makes it so easy. Dean comes off in this video as like the smartest guy, the best debater in the world. And I don't necessarily think that he is, but it's just like such an uneven fight. It kind of reminds me actually of another Jubilee video where Jillian Michaels debated all the fat positivity activists and just destroyed them with basic coherent facts, logic, and adherence to science. And the difference in that case, why I'm not necessarily against them doing that, is those people were actually accurately representing the views of the movement that they claim to support. Those views are actually just that dumb and unsupported and ignorant, and Jillian just slapped them around easily, verbally, of course. Here, I mean, it's just a poor debate choice because she's not really correctly representing the views of the people she's supposed to represent, and she's so ill-informed and not providing any sort of fair fight or challenge for Dean. So I just found this to be so ridiculous. And as far as I'm concerned, she should stop. Like, what does she get out of this? How is she making money and paying her bills? She doesn't get like great engagement or views on YouTube or anything. And I know Jubilee might pay you a small amount, but it's not like they're paying your bills. Like, all you're doing is disgracing your family, your entire family tree, really, at this point, making your whole movement look bad, humiliating yourself publicly. It's like she must be a glutton for punishment. I don't know, but I'm disappointed in Jubilee over this, kind of, because it's like there's so many people who would be willing to do stuff like this that are so much smarter and better representatives and would have a more fair fight, that it's either like strategic negligence on their part, or it's like intentionally they're trying to set up a debate where the liberal comes off looking like this, or progressive, like the clearly smart person, and MAGA looks terrible and cruel and ignorant, in which case that's absolutely not true to the mission that they say they believe in. So I guess I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and assume it's the former rather than the latter, but either way it's disappointing. And I just had to talk about this because, like, this needs to be the end of Emily Wilson, or whatever, Emily Saves America, as a concept, as a thing. She should get a job doing real work. I'm not trying to disparage it, but like, get anything else in the real world that does not involve having to pretend you know anything about politics or debate or law or arguments ever again. Other than that, she's doing amazing. I don't know. You guys have to let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Hit the like button and all of that. And that'll be it for today's episode of the Brad versus Everyone podcast. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk again real soon.